Jeffrey Epstein, a name that echoes through the corridors of power, scandal, and silence. Recently, Senator JD Vance made a statement that reignited public outrage when he declared, "We know Epstein had connections with left-wing politicians and billionaires." He directly accused the Biden administration of hiding Epstein-related files from the American people. But why now? Why are these files still sealed years after Epstein's death? What are they trying to protect, and more importantly, who are they protecting? This video dives deep into the facts, the politics, and the unanswered questions surrounding Epstein's network of influence. We're going to examine who knew what when they knew it and why the truth remains locked away. Stay with me as we uncover what they don't want you to know. Jeffrey Epstein was a wealthy financier who built an empire that gave him access to the world's most powerful people. He wasn't just another wealthy businessman. He was a master manipulator who understood that information and compromise are the ultimate currencies among the elite. Epstein owned multiple properties, including his Manhattan mansion and his private island, Little St. James, in the U.S. Virgin Islands, where federal prosecutors allege systematic sexual abuse and trafficking took place. His private Boeing 727 jet, cynically dubbed the Lolita Express, carried politicians, celebrities, business leaders, and even royalty. Flight logs from this aircraft read like a who's who of global power, but beneath this veneer of high society networking lay something sinister. Federal prosecutors alleged Epstein used his wealth and connections to create a sophisticated network for the sexual exploitation of minors. Young women, many still teenagers, were allegedly recruited and trafficked through his properties. In July 2019, Epstein was arrested on federal charges of sex trafficking minors. For the first time, it appeared he would face real consequences. But then on August 10, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his jail cell. The official cause, suicide. But the circumstances raised serious questions about security failures and suspicious timing. Epstein's death ended the criminal case against him, but it also ensured that the full scope of his network would remain hidden. Thousands of documents, testimonies, and crucial evidence were sealed away, protected by ongoing investigations and legal challenges. The man who could have exposed decades of alleged abuse took his secrets to the grave when Senator JD Vance stepped forward with his bombshell accusations. He wasn't making routine political comments. He was directly challenging the Biden administration's commitment to transparency. Vance's words cut through the noise. "We know Epstein had connections with left-wing politicians and billionaires." But he went further, directly accusing the current administration of actively blocking the release of crucial Epstein-related files. This wasn't subtle political innuendo. It was a direct allegation that the Biden administration is complicit in maintaining a cover-up. The timing is significant, coming when public trust in institutions is at historic lows. Vance positioned himself as demanding transparency for Americans who believe justice should be blind to political status. However, critics quickly pointed out what they see as strategic deflections. While Vance focused on left-wing politicians, he avoided mentioning well-documented connections between Epstein and Republican figures, including former President Trump. Trump and Epstein were photographed together at social events throughout the 1990s and 2000s, with Trump once describing Epstein as a terrific guy who was a lot of fun to be with. This selective focus has led many to question whether Vance's transparency call is genuine or partisan maneuvering designed to protect allies while attacking opponents. Critics argue that true transparency would mean releasing information about all of Epstein's associates, regardless of political affiliation, but regardless of motivations. Vance has succeeded in forcing the Epstein files back into public conversation. The question now is whether this renewed attention will translate into concrete action or fade with the next news cycle. The Epstein flight logs and documents read like a directory of global power, containing names that span decades of political, business, and cultural leadership. These aren't casual acquaintances. These are documented relationships with a man federal prosecutors alleged was running a systematic operation of abuse and trafficking, former President Bill Clinton's name appears frequently in Epstein's flight logs, with documented trips that allegedly included flights to Epstein's private island. Clinton's representatives maintain he was unaware of criminal activity and that interactions were limited to legitimate business. However, the frequency of documented interactions continues to fuel speculation about what he knew and when. Prince Andrew represents perhaps the most publicly damaged figure. His association with Epstein became intense media scrutiny, particularly following allegations by Virginia Giuffre, who claimed she was trafficked to Prince Andrew as a minor. His disastrous BBC interview attempting to defend the relationship only intensified skepticism. Eventually, he was stripped of royal titles and settled Giuffre's lawsuit for an undisclosed amount, though he denies wrongdoing. Donald Trump's connections present a complex case. Trump and Epstein moved in the same wealthy New York circles throughout the 1990s and 2000s. Trump famously called Epstein a terrific guy in 2002, noting he was a lot of fun to be with and suggesting Epstein's preference for younger women was well known. However, the relationship appears to have soured over a real estate deal, with Trump supporters arguing he distanced himself after recognizing Epstein's nature. But documented names represent only the tip of the iceberg. Court documents reference numerous other individuals whose identities remain sealed or redacted. These unnamed figures allegedly include additional politicians, celebrities, business leaders, and academics with varying degrees of involvement or knowledge of Epstein's activities. The question haunting every connection is not simply whether these individuals flew on Epstein's plane, it's what they knew about his alleged crimes and whether they took action to stop them. The selective release of information raises troubling questions. Why are some names public while others remain sealed? Who is making these decisions and what criteria are they using? The political response reveals deep partisan divisions, with each side attempting to weaponize the scandal while deflecting attention from their own vulnerabilities. Democratic leaders dismiss Vance's statements as cynical political theater designed to distract from Republican connections to Epstein. They argue that ongoing legal proceedings and privacy concerns justify keeping documents sealed, accusing Republicans of turning a serious law enforcement matter into partisan politics. Republican leaders have rallied around calls for full disclosure, framing it as fundamental government accountability. They argue Americans deserve to know Epstein's full network regardless of political implications, emphasizing that justice should be blind to political affiliation. They've turned tables on Democrats, suggesting the administration's alleged reluctance demonstrates troubling secrecy patterns. Media coverage has been predictably divided. Conservative outlets amplify Vance's accusations and call for immediate release, often with sensational headlines about potential Democratic connections. Liberal outlets focus on the selective nature of accusations and documented Republican ties, emphasizing legal complexities and legitimate reasons for sealed information. However, beneath partisan divide, grassroots public pressure has emerged that transcends political boundaries. Social media hashtags like #ReleaseTheFiles and #EpsteinList have gained traction among users more interested in exposing truth than protecting political parties. This represents a coalition believing the scandal exposes fundamental problems with power and privilege in American society. This growing demand for transparency doesn't align with traditional partisan strategies, since Epstein potentially implicates powerful figures across the political spectrum, making it difficult for either side to fully embrace transparency without risking damage to allies. Section 5. Why these files matter to 2.5 minutes. The continued secrecy surrounding Epstein files represents more than political controversy. It's a fundamental test of whether our justice system can deliver accountability when alleged perpetrators occupy the highest levels of power. Every sealed document and redacted name represents another barrier between abuse survivors and the justice they deserve. The survivors of Epstein's alleged network have waited years to see their experiences validated through full exposure of the system that enabled their exploitation. These women, many minors when allegedly trafficked, have shown extraordinary courage coming forward despite enormous risks. They've faced character assassination and legal intimidation while watching powerful individuals, potentially complicit in their abuse, continue operating with impunity for survivors. The Epstein files represent evidence that could finally expose the network's full scope. The files potentially contain witness testimonies, financial records, and communication logs establishing who knew what about Epstein's activities and when. This information could be crucial not only for understanding the past but preventing similar networks from operating in the future. The precedent being set extends far beyond this single case. If powerful individuals can shield themselves through legal maneuvering and institutional protection, it sends a clear message that wealth and connections provide effective immunity. Conversely, full transparency could serve as a powerful deterrent and demonstrate our system's capability to hold even the most powerful accountable. Arguments for secrecy often center on protecting privacy of those with innocent associations or preserving ongoing investigations. While these may have legitimacy in specific cases, they cannot justify wholesale suppression of information in a case of such public interest. The public deserves to understand how such an extensive alleged abuse network operated for so long. The selective nature of releases versus sealed information raises troubling questions about who makes these decisions and their criteria. If the goal is protecting innocence and preserving investigation integrity, these decisions should be made through transparent processes with clear accountability, not behind closed doors by officials facing no meaningful oversight. JD Vance lit the fuse with his explosive allegations, but the responsibility for demanding truth now rests with every American who believes justice shouldn't be determined by wealth or political connections. This moment tests whether we'll allow powerful elites to maintain their wall of secrecy or demand the transparency our democracy requires. The Epstein scandal isn't partisan politics. It's about protecting vulnerable individuals and ensuring those who enabled exploitation face consequences. It's about preventing future abuse networks by demonstrating that power cannot shield predators from justice. Most importantly, it's about standing with survivors who courageously shared their experiences and demanded accountability. Your voice matters in this fight. Share this video to spread awareness about the ongoing cover-up. Comment with your thoughts about accountability and government transparency. Contact your representatives and demand full disclosure of Epstein files. Use social media to keep this issue in public consciousness and maintain pressure for justice. Remember, silence was Epstein's greatest weapon. It allowed his alleged network to operate for years, protected by complicity and fear. Today we have the power to break that silence and ensure truth sees light. The files exist, containing names and evidence that could provide long-delayed accountability. The truth is waiting behind legal protection and political maneuvering, but with sustained public pressure, it can be exposed. This is our moment to prove no one is above the law and that justice, though delayed, will prevail. The survivors are counting on us to maintain pressure for transparency. We cannot let them down. Has a role to play in demanding the release of all Epstein-related files and ensuring that all individuals who may have been involved in enabling abuse are held accountable, regardless of their political affiliation or social status. Your voice matters in this fight for justice. Share this video to spread awareness about the ongoing cover-up and the need for transparency. Comment below with your thoughts about who should be held accountable and what actions our government should take to ensure justice for the survivors. Contact your elected representatives and demand that they support full disclosure of all Epstein-related files. Use your social media platforms to keep this issue in the public consciousness and maintain pressure for accountability. Remember that silence was Jeffrey Epstein's greatest weapon. It allowed him to operate his alleged network of abuse for years, protected by the complicity of those who chose to look the other way and the fear of those who were too intimidated to speak out. Today, we have the power to break that silence and ensure that the truth finally sees the light of day. The files exist, containing names and evidence that could finally provide the accountability that has been so long delayed. The truth is waiting, behind layers of legal protection and political maneuvering, but with sustained public pressure, it can be brought to light. This is our moment to prove that in America, no one is truly above the law and that justice, though sometimes delayed, will ultimately prevail. The survivors of this alleged network of abuse are counting on us to maintain the pressure for transparency and accountability. We cannot let them down, and we cannot allow this moment to pass without securing the justice they deserve and the transparency our democracy requires.